Hello there, Jim McCotter here again with Christian Nations Today. Topic is health and education, and the verse is Deuteronomy 4:2. Donald Trump says he is going to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something better, where the individual can choose their doctor and any insurance company they want, where insurance companies will have to compete. Hillary Clinton wants just the opposite. She wants what's called universal health coverage, which in essence puts the government in total control of your health, the industry, and everyone's personal health, how they will eat and live, and who their doctor will be, and if and when they can see them, and even then what care they may or may not qualify to receive. Trump's plan would move the government more out of interfering with everyone's health, their doctors, what hospitals they go to. Hillary's plan would move the government into total government control of your personal health and all things related. Now, with education and schools, Hillary wants to give government and unions more control. Trump wants to give parents more control. Trump is calling for school choice, for all parents to be given control over their children's education. Now, what does God say? Which approach is according to God's civil law? God's government should have nothing to do with individuals' health or education, because that would be adding to God's civil law. God's civil law says in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 2, "Do not add to or subtract from these commands I am giving you. Just obey the commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you." And God does not talk about health care for the civil government or school for the civil government. That's up to the individuals and the families. God's civil law does not have civil government involved in any health care or any education, like it was for generations here in America, when children then could read and they could write, they could do arithmetic, they knew their history, they even learned Greek and Latin. That's, of course, when the Bible was the main textbook in all schools. With only a little of government's involvement where God has not authorized it, it always creates more cost and more problems. Then government steps in again to help the problems it caused in the first place. After continued government interference long enough, we'll eventually lose our freedom. Alexander Tolter, professor of Universal History and Greek Roman Antiquities at the University of Edinburgh, he wrote this, and I quote, "A democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with that result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of world's greatest civilizations," Tolte goes on to say, "from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through," he said, "following sequences," and I quote. Professor said, "It starts with bondage and it moves to spiritual faith. From spiritual faith to great courage. And from great courage to liberty. And from liberty to abundance. And from abundance to complacency. And then from complacency to apathy. And then from apathy to dependence. And from dependence back into bondage." So the only hope is if we Christians would rise up in spiritual faith, to have courage to again proclaim and demand God's biblical civil law for our nation again today. Okay, well, tomorrow we're going to be looking at what Jesus would say about gun control. Did you know Jesus talked about gun control? You're going to be surprised at what he said. We'll see you tomorrow.